As it does every year, the Springfield City Council will determine its leadership team next month. 2019 saw President Justin Hurst and Vice President Marcus Williams lead the group of 13 city councilors and set the agenda for issues to be discussed and debated. Several topics meant conflict between the council and Mayor Domenic Sarno. Some were resolved, others were not. But before we got into that, I asked Hurst why he wanted to be council president again in 2020.
I thought we had done a pretty good job during the first term. I thought we accomplished a number of things that I wanted to accomplish, but government takes a while. And so you can't always get everything done in the first year, and sometimes it takes 2 or 3 years. But I'm really excited about the team. I'm really excited about the new counselors, and I think that we can be just as effective, if not more so, this year as we were last year.
Vice President Williams, you're deciding to make the opposite decision, staying on the council but stepping down from leadership. Why for you?
I mean, I think the role doesn't change too drastically. If you know, a VP essentially stands in for the president when the president's not there. Justin has always been there. So I think it's, it's also a good opportunity to give someone else another chance to be in that leadership position as well. And I actually want to just kind of get to those hardy issues back in touch with the constituents that of course I represent. So, it's good. It was a great experience, and I think that going into another term will provide me some other opportunities as well. So.
Sure, and it's likely that Adam Gomez will step into that vice president's role when the new council comes in January. Yes. So that's sort of the playing field. But I thought this would be a great opportunity to look back at 2019 and talk about some of those priorities that you both had on your lists and see where we stand. I know Police Commission, the Civilian Police Commission, I know it's a hot button issue and it's still unresolved. And when we talked in January of last year, you had this to say.
I'm not 100% sure that a police commission is the answer. What I can tell you is that in absence of a system that is working for the citizens of Springfield, we as counselors need to do something. And so the hope is that you have a number of folks, hiring, firing, and holding officers accountable will make more of a difference than what it is that we have now.
Is that still your thinking?
It is still my thinking. I certainly think Commissioner Clapperud does deserve some credit. I think she's making, she's doing some significant things in the police department to affect change. However, it's really difficult when you've been part of the network for such a long time to come in and really enact the type of change that I think is sustainable and also will change an entire culture. So my preference certainly was to have a national search, and in absence of an actual police commission, we wanted to give the Community Police Hearing Review Board significant powers, but we also wanted to play a role in appointing the individuals who are on the Community Police Hearing Review Board. So in my opinion, we're not that far apart from the mayor. I just think, on the books, it says that the mayor has the appointments, and all we're asking the mayor to do is to concede some of those appointments to the city council in exchange for leaving the sole commissioner format in place.
Yeah, you mentioned Commissioner Clapperud because when we last spoke, Commissioner Barbieri was still in place, and then as you both know, and many people who are watching this know, he resigned relatively abruptly in February amid some of the controversies that have been going on. Have you seen a big difference under Commissioner Clapperud?
Well, I think with Commissioner Clapperud, there seems in my perspective, seem to be a bit of more sense of community. You know what I mean? And I think that's because of her strong C3 background as well. So, and I think more folks know her on the ground as well because she's been around. So, I think she has definitely done some positive things for the police force. My feelings are aligned with Justin on that in regards to the police commission. The city council enacted a law, and the law should be followed. The use of veto power is powerful. But it should be also used responsibly. And that's just, in my opinion, one of the examples where I felt that it was not. So.
Councilor Hurst, the last time we spoke, you also mentioned the idea that maybe a civilian police commission isn't the best idea. Maybe something else would percolate kind of come to the surface. Have any other ideas come up in the time since we spoke?
No, and I'll reiterate. I wasn't happy with the way things were occurring at the time. I still think that there's an issue with transparency. not just in the police department, but throughout city government. And anytime there's an issue with transparency with one branch, it would seem to me that we need to provide checks and balances. And those checks and balances for me would be to have someone from the city council appoint an individual to the Community Police Hearing Review Board. So we could agree to compromise on a sole police commissioner system. However, when we look at the Community Police Hearing Review Board, the city council ought to have a say. I also want to give the city council credit in terms of them being front and center in terms of holding the commissioner accountable and the entire police department accountable. We've been very vocal in terms of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable on the police force, and I think in turn it's made Commissioner Clapper's job a lot easier.
And on balance, Mayor Sarno has said he supports the current system that's in place, and that's been sort of some of this friction. I know we could talk about this for a long time, but I'm going to have us move on to a different issue. Councilor Williams, Chief Diversity Officer was something you were very interested in having happen here in the city. And again, it was one of those areas where there was tension between the mayor and the council. However, the mayor did eventually go ahead and put in a chief diversity officer. It's been a year since Ms. G's been in place, just about a year. How has her position gone? Has it gone as you had hoped?
Well, one of the aspects of the original ordinance that I filed was to have a biannual review of the things, as it relates to her goals and while she's a part of, the administration in this position, as well as to review things that are going well and things that are not, and how the council can support her in those efforts. So I'm certainly for 2020 looking to be having meetings with Talia and just to discuss, those very things. So yes.
And how about for you, Councilor?
Yeah, I echo the sentiments of Councilor Williams. I think there needs to be benchmarks, and so I don't know what the benchmarks that Attorney G has set, but I'd like to know what those benchmarks are, and I want to know whether the city has achieved those benchmarks, and that's the only way we'll tell if this particular position has been as effective as it probably should be.
Will you invite her before City Council to discuss some of that, or?
It was interesting because I was thinking about that on the over the last couple of days as one of the priorities. I mean, it's great that we have a chief diversity officer, but if we don't know what the chief diversity officer is accomplishing as it pertains to the city and city departments, then that position is not as utilized as it probably could be.
Facial recognition is another area that has kind of been talked about at the council level. Councilors Gomez and Ramos proposed an ordinance that would place a 5-year moratorium on the use of the technology. It's not currently being used in the city, but that would place that moratorium. Where do you think this issue should go?
I have to imagine that the moratorium, based off of the research, will hold up at some point in time. I know that we were having a number of committee meetings to just to do a little bit more research and inform councilors as to what the research is saying. But from everything I've read, it seems that there are significant issues with facial recognition as it pertains to identifying folks of color. And so if that continues to be the case, then in my opinion, a moratorium is what makes the most sense. And, we want to protect our citizens, especially those who might be misrecognized.
Commissioner Clapper would say that she would like to see this technology be available for that exact reason, to protect citizens. She's given an example that if the FBI were to release a photo of, say, a terrorist, that the city had access to that photo, and if they showed up in Springfield, you would be able to know. What do you think about her assumption, or her saying that this is something that could protect citizens?
I'm certainly not as confident in the technology at this point that she may be. I think that there's been several cited examples of how this technology has not been consistent across the board. And another point to this is that the city council doesn't have the authority to select, when we put things out to bid, who that vendor is going to be. So if we don't know the lack of inexperience, or the inexperience, for example, that vendor carries, then we have no say in the matter. And that's another point that I want to stress.
And that's not a hard one. When the technology gets refined and when it's more accurate, then we'll simply lift the ban. And so in my opinion, this ought to be something that we should come together on.
I want to ask you both also about the TD Bank branch, tough to say, in Mason Square. We've heard that the branch plans to close in January 2020. Citizens in that section of the city have really raised some concerns about that. What are your thoughts?
I certainly think that Mason Square deserves to have a bank. Taking a bank away from the community it forces folks that don't have reliable means of transportation to go miles away from where they live, which I think is not appropriate. When you look at one of the communities that I actually represent, 16 acres, you can find 3 banks within a certain diameter. So I think that we can do better. TD Bank has been a good philanthropic agent in Springfield, and I think that we need to have some answers questioned and bring them to the table more than once to talk about how we can keep them here.
I know Representative Williams has said he'll step in, he'll get involved. Do you think that that's important?
Absolutely. I think our residents deserve to have a place in which they can bank. I mean, we have a number of elderly citizens who that's the only bank in their neighborhood, and we're in a transportation crisis as well. And so if you don't have access to being able to take out your money or to apply for a loan to possibly rehab your house, then it can pose a number of problems. And they've invested their hearts and souls in our community as seniors, and so why would we not afford them every opportunity to be successful, in their later ages? So
we're short on time, but I do want to look quickly at 2020. One priority for each of you. I'll start with you, Councilor Williams.
I'll stick to the hardy quality of life issues. I'm going to be looking at particularly this year littering and the blight in the city of Springfield.
Councilor Hurst.
I think we still need to make sure that we're monitoring a new industry, which is the marijuana industry. I think we're taking a hard look at cultivation in the city of Springfield, and we need to make sure that we do it right, and we need to make sure that we're taking the best interests of the citizens at heart into consideration when we enter into this new industry. In addition, our hope is that we'll have another round for marijuana dispensaries and ultimately increase the tax revenue so we can do a lot of the things that all of the citizens in Springfield would like to see done.
Ever since she